Last week I added the appropriate hinges for a piece I was working on, but I didn't record it. So I wanted to do a video showing how I installed a set of butt hinges between two surfaces. Here I have two similar pieces of pine wood. I'll put them together on a set of hinges to show you the steps I took. I'm going to use a set of pretty brass butt hinges that need to be fitted into the areas between my wood samples. These hinges are nice. They are somewhat movable, and you can get butt hinges that don't have any play in them at all. But these are nice, and they're meant to be seen. They have a wide assembly, and so we need to account for that when we do our placement. And so I wanted to mark them out so that they were basically even from side to side. Now, these two pieces of wood don't match, but I'm just using it as an example. But still, I want it to, look somewhat finished so you can appreciate the process and the after effects of putting on a nice hinge like this. I didn't do anything to prepare this wood. It's only wood scraps. Now here I'm looking at the depth of the mechanism of turning in between, and I'm trying to gauge how much space I want between my two pieces of wood. And what I need to do is assess about halfway through those hinges to account for that space. And I did do this on the mic in my shop, but for some reason it didn't come out. So here I'm just using a piece of paper to show you approximately half of the width of that hinge, or depth of the hinge, which to me looks like about a 1/16 of an inch. And so that's where I'm going to start. Sometimes I do actually have to get down a little bit deeper, but that's a good starting spot. It's better to take a little less than a little too much. So you can always take more off. And here I'm doing some measuring, and what I'm doing is 4 inches inset from either side of these boards, and it's not a perfect measurement because the boards aren't actually the same length, so they're slightly off. And here what I'm going to do is, from the first tick mark that I put, I'm going to slide that hinge over toward the right so that it's covered. I cover that tick mark with the hinge, because my next mark, I don't want it to be too wide, so here I'm going to kind of protect myself from taking off too much, and I'm going to go a little shy of that measurement. And then when I start cutting, I'm actually going to cut on the inside of the tick marks to protect myself even more, because you have to assume as well that you're going to do a little bit of sanding or buffing with a Dremel tool, or if you had a router, that would be super nice as well. But yeah, so you want to account for that, and I'm just showing you more details on how I really take my time and make sure it's as close to what I want as possible. And now I'm going to measure here. I'm using just a little stick to measure the depth of what I'm going to carve out. And here I was doing the same measurement on the side, but I was out of focus there. So I'm going to show you what I did on this side. Yeah. So here you can see that I'm putting my edge on the inner part of the tick mark. And I'm going to use my chisel, which is nice and sharp, with the hammer and tap down on my line to create a space for that wood to be able to break, because you can see the grain of that wood is really wavy, and so if I were to just dig in there with a chisel, it's going to want to break on one of those grain variations, and I don't want that. I want to control where the cuts are. So I'm going to be really careful to put some good tension here to force the cuts where I want them to be. If you had a nice tight grained wood, you might not even need to do this, but this is pine. It's very soft, and it's going to have a lot of give to it when I put pressure on it from that chisel. Now here I should have put a little clamp on my wood, and I didn't, but I do end up grabbing a clamp. As you can see that I'm fighting with that. And yeah, I know I'm going to use my elbow to hold it, but I will go over and grab a clamp. So yeah, I'm going to dig in here. As you can see, that grain just jumps right away with my chisel, even though I put a nice slice in there. It has its own mind, and so it starts to lift up more than what I want, but it's okay. It ends up being the depth that I need anyway. But you'd have to be aware of that. So if it wasn't the depth that I needed, I would have to glue that piece back down, and it would hold up the placement of my hinge. You don't want to have glue underneath your hinges if you can help it. And I have to go on each side to get a good grip on my chisel. And I'm trying hard not to pop that grain. And here's the other side. I'm just showing you how I make my lines. And now I'm going to show you how I also do it on the front part of that piece of wood, which could be a cabinet face. All right, now I'm going to again go with my saw and go in the inside of the tick marks, and you'll see, I think you'll see that I end up gradually widening that space, which is exactly what I wanted to do, because I don't want to start too wide. I want to be able to take off just enough wood that my hinge will slide right in. So here you can see with the clamp I have a lot more control. I'm less apt to cut myself with my sharp chisels. And if I didn't say it before, you want to have your chisels, you want to keep them nice and sharp. So here I have my chisel tipped upside down for a brief moment. I don't know if you could see that, but that helps me take less material when I start off. Right there, I want the flat back against most of the grain, as I don't want to push a bevel against the grain. Here you go. Oh, it popped right out. So now I'm going to clean that up and make it as straight as I can. And then I'll slip my hinge in there and see what I have, and then I'll take off more of what I need until I get that exact space that will fit that hinge. Also, you'll see that this particular hinge has two sections that will need to be chiseled out. Two different sections that will need to fit. And that's looking pretty good, but I need to take some more depth and width. And I will want to take as little material as I need to take, and then I want to make them as straight on the corners as possible. So here you can see me moving the hinge. And now I'm making that corner straight. Just making tiny cuts with the chisel. And that pine is very, very soft. I'm pressing down on the top of the chisel with my fingers so that I have the best control possible. And I obviously have this on high speed just so you can see how many little bits of changes I have to make on there. Now I'm getting the big guns. I just took a little bit bigger of a chisel. And each hinge you put in gets a little bit easier because you're actually experiencing the placement of each particular hardware. So the first one is always the most challenging. And you can see how nice that's getting right now. Nice and square. I still need to keep taking bits of material off. And I will end up sanding. That's looking pretty good now. And now I have to account for that little lip on the inside because that's going to need just a little bit more room. You can see where the hinge moves, and that's kind of a fancy application. And so I need to account for that so that the hinge will slip in nice and comfortably. Trying to square it off. Pretty good. So I'm just sanding it off, and I'll end up using my Dremel tool with a little bit of a grinder tip on there to get it even better. So now I'm going to do the hinge on the other side, and I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to be very modest about how much I take out because I can always add more, but I can't put it back. Okay, I'm using this as my stationary side. Okay, that fits pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the other side. And this is the side that I glued. I may not have had to glue it, but I wanted to start with a clean surface. And so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And I'll catch up with you in a little bit. Okay, so I used my chisels to carve those out. And now I'm going to just use my Dremel tool and try to smooth it out a little bit. I sanded it as much as I could with a small sanding. On this board. On this board. And so now we're just going to make sure that there's a reasonable amount of space between these two pieces so that they will be evenly lifted once they're. So let's put some holes in there. Hopefully get to the center of those. This is a soft wood, so I can actually push that in enough to make a little mark right in the center. I think I will use the screwdriver on this. I'm not making them excruciatingly tight. I don't have enough of these, but let's make sure that this is going to move before I snug them all down. Again, I'm not going to make them horribly tight. Now let me bring you a little bit closer, and you can see the line is pretty good. It's probably not perfect. It probably could come in a little bit on this side. But they work nicely. And you can see how they fit. They fit really nice. You know, I can do a little sanding in here. But that was like a quick way to do it. I just wanted to kind of show you that that's what I did. Now let me show you a finished one. When I say finished, I did finish that, but in other words, a real one. So this one I did. That was on my project from last week. And you can see, of course, this is kind of bitten up. I had to fill these with some wood putty because they had fallen apart. But that's what I did here. It's nice and even. But yeah, so they only sent me one brass chain, so I have to order another one. And yeah, so that's that. When your scissors are getting worn out from cutting cardboard boxes and things like that. These actually aren't too bad, but I have used them a lot at home to cut things, and you can see, I don't know if you can see actually, they just have taken a little bit of abuse. And even though they're clean, they seem to be pitting a little bit. So first I'm going to go over them with a little bit of alcohol and clean paper towel. I'm going to just tear up a shop towel and use a little bit of it. So I'm going to spray some 91% alcohol on my shop towel. And I'm just going to go over these scissors carefully so I don't cut myself, but to make sure that they're nice and clean and I don't have any glue on them that I'm trying to get off with my sanding stone. Afterwards, I'll go over here and I'll tighten that up a little bit just to make sure it's nice and tight. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the scissors so that the bevel is down on my sanding stone. And I'm going to put my hands, I'm going to give myself some room here. I'm going to put my fingers on top of it and put some pressure on it at, about a 30-degree angle, I suppose. Let me move this out of the way. And I'm going to try to hold it in the same angle all the way down the blade. Now the blade is a little bit long, so I'm going to have to go up and down on that blade. But let's start on the inside and just pull down. Now I'm going to take it up to the end. I'm going to try to hold the same angle. I can see that this is digging in a little bit, so it's probably a little bit crooked on the end, or I have a burr on it. So let me use a Q-tip and add a little bit of oil to my edge. I have a little bit of olive oil here. I'm just going to dip my Q-tip in the olive oil and kind of follow that edge. Feels nice and tight though. It feels different though. I don't know if I'll be able to notice if it cuts any better. I really do think I'll be able to notice. I don't know if you will be able to notice. I can notice it because I don't feel any burrs at all. I don't feel any catching. They're just household scissors, so it's good to have them working well. And I'm going to take a clean Q-tip and a little bit of my olive oil and just do a little bit of a final coating just to keep them nice and oiled. And I like using olive oil. And I use oils that, maybe that I bought and I didn't really like that much at the table, so maybe a little too heavy, but that's perfect for taking care of my tools. I cut myself. Okay. Great. Perfect. Now I can take them home, put them back in the drawer. Thank you for watching this week's video. And yeah, this week you watched me do a few homey things. One of those things was to save your scissors rather than throwing them out in the trash when they get, little burrs on them and they're just not sharp anymore. You can sharpen your scissors pretty easily. Take your time, use a little oil on it, use one of those nice sharpening bars. I actually like doing it, and I like doing my chisels too. And you have to have your chisels really sharp. your shizzles. Keep your shizzles sharp. Yeah, so, and then I did show you a little bit more about how I place hinges. Now, I am not the best at that, obviously, and but I can make my way around these things, and I've learned a little bit, and so hopefully it will help you not to be afraid if you do have to do it yourself. There are hinges that are easier to place than those. Those are hinges that have to be inset a little bit, and you can even inset the entire hinge into your wood, which I didn't do. I just did a simple butt hinge application and showed you how to measure it so that it would be halfway between each hinge, and then when it opens up, it opens up evenly on each side. What else? Yeah, I did it with some rudimentary tools. You don't have to have fancy tools. I do like my chisels. They're not the best chisels, but I take such good care of them, I hope, that they do me for what I need to do with them. So, yeah, and I really, really enjoy using them. I don't always get to use them, but when I do, I really like it. I hope to get a lot better doing it. And I just wanted to show you that you can do it too if you have not too many tools. You don't even need a saw, but you could do it with a saw and one chisel, really. You need only one chisel to do it. And you can do that too. Just be careful with your measuring. That's the hardest part for me. But yeah, I mean, it worked out okay. And then I showed you the finished work on the project that I did last week where I had to replace that whole hinge system with something that actually worked on that secretary cabinet. So yeah, I want to thank you for watching the videos. Thank you so much for subscribing and for chatting and leaving comments. Thank you if you get to watch the live videos that I've been putting out in the middle of the week. We seem to be having a really good time with that. And oh, just to let you know that I hope in the next live that I'm actually going to be sharing the screen with a special person, another YouTuber that I know you love and follow. So that will be such fun, and we can talk about, we can talk about anything to do with refinishing and crafts, and she has a lot of special talents, talents that I don't have, and experience that I don't have. And yeah, but it's a surprise. We'll wait until Wednesday, and we'll do a live on Wednesday, and I might be changing the time of the live, or discontinuing them. It depends on what you all want. I don't want to waste your time if you're not interested in watching them, because it's not refinishing, but it's just more like a chat, a midweek chat. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned a little something. And I hope it made you a little less anxious about trying some new things, even if it wasn't one of these things. We can all get there. We'll all get there in our own time. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're subscribed, and I hope you like the video. Share the video if you like. It helps my little YouTube channel grow. And have a great rest of your weekend, and I wish you all good and beautiful things. And take care.